All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Meandering Market. We're going to talk about bards today. We want to make sure that everybody knows, hey, we're experts, kind of, but not really. So really take our advice with a grain of salt. Make sure it applies to you before you take everything just as is. We're not right for everybody, and our advice is not right for everybody either. I'm Aaron.
I'm Daniel.
And I'm Caleb.
And yeah, let's get into the bard.
The bard is a pretty old character type. And there's a lot of generalizations about it. Some of them good, some of them not so good. On a positive note, the bard is kind of considered a jack of all trades. Interesting history about the game in second edition, and we were talking about this before we started recording, but it was a prestige class that required 3 or 4 different multi-classes in order to let it come online. So the reputation for being a jack of all trades, pretty deserved. However, as of this edition, bards are horny trademark. If you've been on Reddit or TikTok, you know this. Bards are also generally played as pretty outlandish and over the top. Very much the dramatic performer throwing rose petals as he plays a lute. Toss a coin to your witcher, that little moment in history.
He warned me about the Witcher references.
2020 was a bad year in general, but good TV to start it off.
The Witcher existed, yeah.
Yeah. It's also got sort of a very much a support magic vibe. We got some theater kids up in here, huh? If you were in theater, especially in high school, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You're dramatic and you love it. And this is a fun class for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So, if you were going to make a character purely based off of bard stereotypes, and again, like Daniel said, if you've gone on Reddit or gone on TikTok or any social media that likes to talk about D&D in general, you've seen this. You are a lust-compelled sex deviant who never fights, only loves, and anytime they see the BBEG, it's not roll for initiative, it's rolling to seduce. Most of this comes from the fact that bards are one of the few classes in D&D that actually gets expertise, but unlike the rogue, they're charisma casters, meaning that most of their expertise is going to go in the charisma skills, and so they'll go for being a lover rather than a fighter more times than not. In one of the campaigns I ran, I had a bard who fit most of the stereotypes. Super hot, very charming. Everywhere they went, they were a little dense, but wanted to make friends with everybody. But they played against type by having them be, for the most part, aromantic and asexual. Anytime anybody made any advance on them, they turned off immediately. They were like, we're just going to back away here. And they fell in love with one NPC and pursued them for the entire campaign. And when that NPC died, they stopped pursuing anybody. So I think most people will lean into that sort of stereotype because the mechanics do support it, but it is very much what's expected of bards and a lot of memes these days.
Yeah. On that note, getting into what can make a really exciting off-type and non-conventional bard is you can make someone who's not interested in sex or in dating people. You could make a damage-focused, someone who's like, all right, I'm going to do cast a lot of damage magic. I'm going to use my swords more than, buff magic. You could be someone that's like a lore keeper, someone who's a book nerd, likes to write down a lot of stuff rather than talk about it and be a douchebag. And just there's a lot of things you can do with it, honestly. And because it's a very charismatic class, there's just a lot of really cool options you can go with for off-type non-conventional bards. I will say this is one of the few classes I haven't made an off-type before. I've only played a very traditional bard. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Aaron is kind of our off-type guy, so if he hasn't made it, it's pretty weird by our standards.
Yep.
Yeah, hey, we'll have to do a one shot soon where I make an off type one, I guess.
Okay. Now, as per what is becoming a tradition, we are going to get to the subclasses, give some advice, some role playing, a brief overview of what the subclass does, and it's us, probably a light roasting. So let's jump into it with the College of Creation Bard. This one is super, super new. It's from Tasha's. So I don't know how many people have had a lot of chances to look over it unless they're like intent on staying up to date with stuff. But it is a really interesting subclass. It's like one of the very basic mechanics is the super bonuses to inspiring people, and whatever they use your inspiration for, it can give them another really helpful benefit from it. So start tossing it out like candy. You are one of the 2 subclasses that inspiring is your main benefit. Asterisk. Because once you get to higher levels, it will become clear to everyone at the table that you were either inspired or traumatized by Mickey Mouse from Fantasia with the dancing brooms.
Yep.
Possibly both. Hard to say. You're hard to read, you weirdo. I'm just kidding. I love you guys. But yeah, creation is really, really interesting, has a lot of flexibility, and it's overall, I would say, kind of a Disney princess vibe in a way. Like, you're getting inanimate objects to help you. You can make stuff appear in your hand.
Yeah. One of our friends was making a bard for one of our one shots, and she wanted to do a Kuro and the 3 strings vibe, I think is what the movie's called.
I think it's Kubo. Yeah.
Kubo, right. Kubo and the 3 strings, and just, making music and creating things around the character. It was really interesting stuff.
Yeah. Aaron doesn't watch movies, guys.
If you have any movie recommendations, leave them in the comments.
Kubo and the 3 strings.
No.
I've actually never seen Kubo. I wanted to, and it's just never come around.
Philistines.
Yeah.
I've never been into claymation, which is why I didn't watch it, but I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
So moving on, the next one is also one of the newest subclasses to have come out, and that is the College of Eloquence Bard. Now, this one is interesting because it is very based on inspiration. Most subclasses for bards allow you to use your inspiration to do other things. Eloquence allows you to use your inspiration more than all the other subclasses. It allows you to give inspiration out more often. It allows you to use your charisma skills at a capped modifier, much like the rogue's reliable talent skill. It is very much the speech-giving, diplomatic bard. The best example of a relevant character I can think of is Alexander Hamilton from Hamilton. He is my definition of a College of Eloquence bard. Bold, infectious with his words and his speech, and commands the spotlight wherever he goes. I think that's basically what a College of Eloquence bard is. They're the bard if you want to play the quick-thinking, smart-talking, charming bard who inspires people.
Yeah, believe it or not, I've actually seen Hamilton.
That's good. It is worth watching.
I am so caught off guard by this. Sure. Eloquence is also, I mentioned, they're in creation. Those are the 2 that inspire. If you want to inspire, play one of those 2, please.
Yeah.
Although you can inspire as any of them.
You can, but those 2 are the specialists.
Yeah, definitely. If you're going with the inspirational leader feat, I'd say those are the 2 subclasses you keep in mind.
Yeah, and Eloquence, I think it just kind of naturally fits. Like, you're already the guy who's talking a lot. You might as well give an inspirational speech to your friends before you do anything.
Yeah,
exactly. And honestly, a fun way you could do this if you wanted to play something offbeat is you could play a character who's just inspiring in nature. They don't talk that much, That would be kind of funny. You know, play a character who's just like, and everyone's like, yes, let's go.
Oh my
Long
God.
shot from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He's a very, very small character. There's a scene where Jet is trying to talk to him and he's getting really worked up, and Longshot says nothing. He just stares, and eventually Jet goes, "You're right. Thanks for talking to me, buddy." And he's like, all good. And Longshot has said nothing, and he just smiles and nods. That's my favorite type of character.
Yeah.
The meaningful look.
Yeah.
Man, so good. All right. Next subclass we want to get into is the Glamour Bard. This is the one Bard subclass I've played. Pretty much, this is your pop star, your idol. So Taylor Swift, Beyonce. You know, what are those called? The animated idols that they do in Japan now. I can't remember what those are called.
Vocaloids.
Vocaloids, yeah.
VTubers.
VTubers, you know. Really, this is your famous person, your pop star. You are usually beautiful. You're really focusing on your performance, and you get fans. That's your part of your abilities. Is you literally get fans anywhere you perform, and that can make for a really fun character. And you know, it's kind of interesting. There's two sides to it. If you're trying to play like a sneaky part of a campaign, but everybody's recognizing you, that can be a problem. It might be good to have someone that can disguise you. But, you know, it's also fun to just be walking around and be like, hi, I know all of you. Hello. You love me.
The bard in the campaign that I was mentioning, he was a glamour bard. And the fact that he was so uninterested in relationships actually added to his sort of his fandom almost, because it was very much like a K-pop sensation of like anybody could be with him because he doesn't have anyone. And that was actually played into a lot during the campaign. So
Yeah. And when I think of glamour, I think of like David Bowie from Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Like, that is a glamour bard if ever I have seen one. It's so good.
Never seen it.
Come on, Aaron.
Surprise! A movie Aaron hasn't seen. Okay, so the next bard subclass we're going to talk about is lore. And lore is honestly my favorite of the bard subclasses. I'm really glad this is one of the ones I got to talk about. Because the lore bard is, I think, the best illustration of what bards were conceptualized to be. They're flexible. They can do a lot of different things, and they can do them well, especially with their 6th level ability to pick up extra spells. And all bards can do that, but lore bards get an edge. They're also just the best for skills. They pick up a bunch of new skills at like 3rd level. And I think if you want to play a bard that's relatively simple, lore is the one you go with, because at lower levels it doesn't have any complicated mechanics, and at higher levels it just has that added layer of flexibility. As for role-playing advice, it feels really, really cool to like lean into the lore. You know, maybe you're a storyteller and you've traveled around sort of like an anthropologist. You know, maybe you're a bookkeeper. You know, classic bards were in part lore keepers. It was one of the multi-classing requirements all the way back in 2nd edition was wizard. Your bard had to be a certain amount of smart before they could be a bard.
And then next up is the College of Swords. This one is an interesting one because many people don't understand it. A lot of people look at it and say, why would you not just play a rogue? And it's because this is essentially the rogue subclass, or at least one of 2 of the rogue subclasses for the bard. The next rogue subclass we'll get to at the end of this. But the College of Swords bard is one of 2 things. It could be your swashbuckler, think Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride, one of my favorite movies of all time. He is a talented swordsman who has just a charm and gravitas around him where anybody he fights tends to have a pleasant conversation with him while they do so. The other option is your exotic sword fighter you see in a lot of different games, movies, different media. The one who wields 2 scimitars and is swirling around while the rest of them are just knights fighting in their usual armor. These are bards who use swords as their method of art. They are talented, they are a little bit flashy with them, and a lot of their abilities actually cater to this sort of fantasy. You can expand your bardic inspiration to do special things with your swords other fighters couldn't do. You can hit multiple people at once. You can move people out of the way. You can move faster. A lot of those abilities. So this is very much your, do I want to be a super talented swordsman, but also want to be able to wink and smile as I zip past who I'm fighting? This is a good way to go for that.
Yeah. One thing about swords is that it's the most common to multi-class with rogue because it combines so well with the swashbuckler subclass.
It does.
Next, we wanted to talk about the Valor subclass. This is really, it's similar to swords in some ways. You get a lot of weapon proficiencies and such, but really your goal is to assist more in combat. So you're focusing a lot more on the glories of combat. You're giving inspirational speeches. You're the heart of the battle, but you're not necessarily doing a lot of the fighting. You're just assisting your fighters, your barbarians, your paladins in making hits and doing damage, and you're just giving them that little extra boost of confidence they need to get in the fight and do what they need to do. So it's a lot of fun to play, and it's just one of your classic bards.
Yeah.
Finally, we come to the one that Caleb alluded to a few moments ago, the Whispers Bard. Now, I was going to make an ASMR joke, but we don't have time for that. The Whispers Bard is the other one that is very much rogue inspired, but where swords is all about swashbuckling, flashy movements, being over the top and dramatic. A Whispers Bard is more likely to try and blend into the background. More akin to the thief or assassin character. They actually, like a lot of other bards, they have a way to expend their bardic inspiration for something other than inspiring. In this case, to pull off sort of a psychic sneak attack type ability. It's a really interesting feature. I would highly recommend taking a look at it if that sounds interesting. I also, I love to imagine the type of person who makes a Whispers Bard is like, I want to be a rogue and I want to be sneaky and I want to hide in the shadows, but I also want to mumble my own theme music while I'm being silent. Like the person who's doing the spoof of Mission Impossible while singing the Mission Impossible music.
Kronk while trying to get Cusco out of the temple.
Yeah, honestly, in that moment, you could make the case.
Next, we want to talk about the kind of stuff that you don't want to do while playing a bard. Pitfalls that can happen while you're role-playing them that can really lead to a less fun experience for everybody at the game table. First one we're going to talk about is you're not the protagonist. There is no protagonist in D&D. The protagonist is your party as a whole. So please don't try and hog the spotlight. You may be very, very good at social situations, and that's awesome. And it's probably a good thing for you to be the party face and step forward and take care of that. But don't always make that just about you. One of the best examples I could think of is from the TV show Psych. Every time they go up to talk to somebody, the main character, Sean, introduces himself and then introduces his companion, Gus, as something utterly ridiculous every time. I would love to actually play a character who every time he walks up, he introduces himself and introduces his party member incorrectly, allowing them to inject themselves in the situation and join in on the conversation. It's great if you're good at talking. It's a lot more fun if there's somebody who's good at talking and somebody who's not so good trying to bounce off each other. It can lead to some really fun moments. The other thing is don't get too stuck up in the concept phase. Bards are a hugely vague class. You can do a lot of stuff with them. They don't fit any particular mold that most people would. A lot of the people we mentioned as examples for bards in our subclass section could also be easily fit into other classes. So don't get too caught up on that. Instead, focus on making an interesting character rather than necessarily an interesting bard. They're usually from a lot of different walks of life. So have fun and experiment with that. Lastly, and we have to address this, I don't think there's any way to avoid it. A horny bard is only fun in certain sections. If your party is uncomfortable with you playing that kind of character, please don't do it. If they are okay with it, play it tactfully. Actually create a fun character that has more going on to them than just, haha, I am horny and I like to get in bed with other things. Think more onto that. If they are that way, why are they like that? Are they trying to fill some void in their heart? Is there something else going on? Do they have a problem which the party needs to intervene on? Think more onto it rather than just that's their only character trait, because it gets boring really fast. And it is not fun for any of them, especially not for your dungeon master if you haven't checked in with them first.
One of the things that I've heard a lot is that that gimmick of sleeping around a lot can, if you do it sometimes, it's fun and funny, you know, people get a good laugh out of it. But if you do it all the time, it gets really obnoxious and people don't really, they're like, oh, okay, that's literally like all his character is just about, you know, sleeping around.
Exactly.
There is also, like, don't try and play it out. Just let it fade to black, unless you're in a very specific type of game, and then I hope you guys find each other.
Yep.
But what Aaron said is a very good point. Like, every so often, good. Too often, people are going to start accusing you of having some kind of exhibitionism fetish, and you don't need that, whether it's true or not. If it's true, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of the point of the fetish, but do it anyways.
You want to keep the interventions in the game, not out of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, I'm sorry to harp on this, guys, but it is really a big deal. If you look on any forum in which RPG horror stories are discussed, 30% of them start with "our bard was gross."
Yeah. A great example, and I know that pointing out anything in Critical Role is tried and true because they're good players. They're actors, they're professionals, but not only that, they really care about each other. But Scanlan from the first campaign was a horny bard. He slept around. And one of the things that Sam did to offset that was he put in his backstory that there was somebody he actually truly loved and couldn't be with. And so no matter how many times that happened, he would eventually start straying to trying to be a good person for the character that he loved. And then one of the things Matt did, which no spoilers, but he put something that had consequences for the actions that Scanlan did. And that led to even more interesting things. So it is okay to have that kind of stuff if your party is okay with it. But don't let it be more interesting than just, I want to get my rocks off in a D&D game. There's an internet for that. Use it for that. So, which actually does lead to the very last point, which is make sure if you want to do any sort of romance between PCs, you have checked with the players. That's very important. It can be very intrusive and can lead to the game falling apart if you are not double checking on that.
All right. Lastly, let's get into how to spice up your bard's role playing. One of the main things that people sometimes forget about bards is one of the main aspects of the class is that you are a performer. So you can really delve into the idea of like, okay, my character is a musician, is an artist, is a person that does a lot of theater. Like, okay, that's really cool, but who taught them that? You know, you can find a mentor character for your DM to mess around with. You can, maybe your mentor doesn't like fighting and is just a musician and is like, why are you adventuring? That can lead to some really interesting opportunities and role play moments in the game. Another thing is that most bards tend to have a lot of skills. They're very talented people. Rogues and bards are probably the most talented characters. Focus on your weaknesses rather than your talents. Let's say you have a dump stat. Make sure some of your moments are when you are like, I'm good at everything. Let me make this athletics check when I have a -2. Fall on your face. Make a good couple moments there. That could be a lot of fun. Another thing, if your character does sleep around or has a past of sleeping around, maybe you have some kids or some old lovers that you can tell your DM, hey, these are some characters that you can throw in and make really awkward, uncomfortable situations when 3 of your kids show up at once in a bar. And that's about it. And then lastly, it's one of the most intricately role play focused classes with lots of skills and utility based around that. Don't be afraid to lean into it and make your character really sociable. And you can really help party relations with that. You can help relations with NPC characters. If you're playing a political campaign, you can also help with your politics and negotiating. Lean into that. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, you don't have to play everything off beat. Just use what you're good at and keep doing it. Have fun.
All right. Well, thank you for coming, everybody. We hope you enjoyed your time here and hope you learned a thing or two about how to roleplay a bard in your next D&D 5th edition game. We hope you had a good time and that you walk away with treasured memories. Have a good one.
Bye.